All right, we are back at it on the SuccessFlow podcast, and we have a real treat for you today, listeners. This has been in the works for a while, but we have an awesome guest today in Callie Patrick. And I've known Callie for some time. We talk about reset a lot on this podcast, and that is where we first met. But Callie is a dedicated Muay Thai fighter, competing consistently in the Muay Thai game, fighting out of Golden Era Muay Thai in Scottsdale. And though we met at Reset, the amount of conversations we've had around mixed martial arts and recovery and this podcast being about defining success for yourself, Callie just embodies that. So welcome to the show, Callie.
Thanks, guys.
And how are you doing today?
Thank you. I feel really good today. I'm excited to be here, excited to be talking with you guys today and just sharing some of my life and knowledge and experience. So, yeah.
Awesome to have you. It's nice to meet you. Phil's talked a lot about you. I know you guys met at Reset. I've been to Reset once. For anyone listening, if you've never been to Reset, it's kind of like what would you call it? Like you get the sauna, you get the cold plunge, you got the
like a wellness center, basically.
Yeah. It's like a membership program, and you can pop in, get an appointment or whatever. And I think Phil had a guest pass, and I got to enjoy it, and it was awesome. I'm not an expert in cold plunges, but I've done it a handful of times, and I have one a 10,000 gallon cold plunge in my backyard in the winter is my experience. But having an actual place to go to is really cool. So kind of kick us off on like how you got into that world and why health and wellness was so important for you.
Oh man, you guys want the short story or the long story?
No, take us back. Take us back.
Okay, so, man, like I don't think it's something that I knew that I wanted to do because I honestly just stumbled upon Reset, ironically. But it was something that I think that I was manifesting during my entire life because I started martial arts when I was 15 and I started, basically working when I was 15 too. And I had a couple jobs just to support myself and fighting, paying my own bills, paying for healthy meals because my family was just different, So, I went down that route and I found a job that was a behavioral health tech, and that was kind of my first big girl job, and I was really excited about it. I was making some good money. Well, I was making okay money, but it was really good at the time, because it wasn't as expensive as it is nowadays in the economy. But yeah, I was making pretty good money. I was living on my own. I worked that job and then another part-time job, and I was supporting myself and fighting and then living on my own, obviously. And I was behavioral health tech, and for those of you who don't know what that is, I was working with kids who had autism, and I was planning their intervention programs and working with them on behavioral procedures and working with their families as well with different behaviors and trying to help them understand their children a little bit better and kids who have autism because they live quite a different life than what we, us neurotypical people live. So I was doing that for about 3 years, and when I first started, it was awesome, and I loved it, and, the second year came around, and I still liked it, but it was starting to become a lot because, if you're not going to therapy, if you're also, doing a lot of other things outside of your world, behavioral health, it's a really big career, so it takes up a lot of your life, not just your time and, and the money and everything like that, but your energy as well. Just being around the behaviors all day. So I got really burnt out of it, and I was kind of just spiraling at this point in this time of my life. And when I was there, I kept almost just praying, I really want a job that complements fighting, that allows me to work part-time throughout the day, but also kind of gives me a little bit of fulfillment as well, because I really like the fulfillment of, taking care of the families and the kids and being around people and coaching them, but it was just becoming exhausting. So my third year into behavioral health, being a behavioral health tech, I stumbled upon one recovery center that was in Peoria, and I tried them out, and it was cold plunging and sauna. So it was kind of the same thing as Reset. They just didn't have a hot tub. And I went through it, and I was like, this is really cool. And so I kind of picked the guy's brain that owned it, and I was like, how did you like get into this? And he started telling me a little bit about his story. It's called Art of Recovery, by the way. And it's a really dope facility. Like they open it up to a lot of like fighters and I mean the public in general, but like a lot of fighters go there because they have a jiu-jitsu gym right across the way. And I just thought it was super dope. Like I found it through another like person that I was training with at the time. And then ironically enough, I was getting my hair cut down the street in Phoenix, and I like kind of was like thinking about this place. And the place that I was getting my hair cut at didn't have a bathroom, and they're like right next to Reset, And I was like, dude, like I gotta go, like we gotta find something. So because I'm about to be in this chair for like an hour or two, So I was like looking around, and I found this place that says Reset at the top, and there's there's nothing on their windows. It's just this like weird like.
You're like, what the hell is this place?
I was like, I don't know what this is. So I was like, let me go in here. And so I walked in, and there's this really sweet blonde girl like standing at the front, and she was like, hi, like, how can I help you? Welcome to Reset. And I was like, I just need to use your bathroom. And she was just like, okay. And she kind of like was weirded out a little bit. And so we were walking to the back, and this is at the time where like, I mean, obviously, Steven, you've probably seen the remodel of Reset where it's like all beautiful. But at the beginning, it was just like one box cold plunge, and Phil probably remembers this, and like a hot tub, and I think just 2 saunas we had at the time.
Couple saunas, yeah.
Phil might have single-handedly kept that one in business in the early days, just to be in there every hour so they could reinvest in making it prettier, huh?
Yeah, seriously. So shout out to Phil, but. Yeah, we were in there, and we were walking to the back, and I was like, what? I was like, oh my gosh. I was like, does this place, like, is this like a wellness facility? And she was like, yeah, like, do you have some time for me to show you? I was like, girl, no, I got to go to the bathroom, and then I got to go get my haircut, but I'll be back, So I did that, and then I came back in, and at the time it was only $10 for a full session at Reset for a full hour. And, don't let the numbers hear that.
Get you in.
When was it? How long ago was this?
This was like 3.5 years ago, I want to say.
It's probably almost 4 years ago, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, close to that. So, yeah, I went back in, and then I did a full session for $10, and it was a full hour, and that same girl took me through. And I was in the hot tub, and it's so funny because, like, Tim, the co-founder of Reset, like he said that he started Reset in the hot tub, just like the ideas and the creativity, everything kind of came to him in the hot tub. I was sitting in the hot tub my first time ever at Reset, and I was thinking about my life. I was thinking about behavioral health job. I was going through a lot of other things at the time too. And the accumulation of stress that was in my body was affecting me, like mentally. It was affecting what I was eating, what I was doing, and like my training and my fighting and everything like that. And I was sitting in the hot tub, and I was just like, something needs to change. I was like, I can't keep working at the behavioral health job. I can't keep like doing everything at once. I was also going to school at the time, mind you. I was also like in college. So I was doing a lot, like it was just like sun up to sundown, constantly doing something, even on the weekends I was working. So I was just like, something needs to change. And she comes up to me, and she was like, how are you liking everything? I was like, dude, I freaking love it here. Like I've done something similar in the past one other time, and it was really cool. But like this concept is just so awesome. And, I kind of picked her brain about how she started working here. And she was like, we're hiring right now. I just kind of wanted to put it out there for you. So she's like, I just kind of feel called to like tell you that. And I was like, yeah. I was like, well, like, what's the pay? And like, I was going to take a pay cut, and at the time, like living on my own, it was, I needed the money, so I was going through a lot of other things at the time too, but I knew I couldn't keep living on my own because it was starting to get more expensive. And I was like, okay, well, what am I going to do? Am I just going to live paycheck to paycheck and like mentally not like want to just like feel the stress of life and feel the burden of life and exhaust myself? Or do I want to try to just take a risk and, like do something that fuels me and makes me happy?
Isn't that so cool? Like you're just like going about your day, and all of a sudden an opportunity comes in front of you, and you're just like, holy crap, this could be like a pivotal moment for me. And at the point you mentioned fulfillment a couple of times, and this is like, it gives you purpose, right? Like it more so than what you were doing before, because you wanted to build a foundation and all that stuff. But you get an opportunity. And one of my favorite quotes from Richard Branson says, if someone offers you an amazing opportunity and you're not sure you can do it, just say yes and figure it out later. And so that's really cool. It's a cool story. And now you've been doing this. So you're part of the program at Reset for a few years now, a couple years?
Yeah, 3 years now. I started off as like part-time, and then now I'm a partnering manager. So I'm helping them
it's amazing.
build the community.
Congratulations.
Yeah, thank you.
Well, you're growing too, because I live up near Cave Creek, and right before the pod started, we were talking about, I was like, yeah, if there was one closer, it'd be nice. Yeah. But Arcadia is a bit of a trip for me. But you guys are expanding. Yeah, we have, and you're kind of all over.
Sorry. Yeah. We have 5 different studios we're opening up right now. So East Valley will have Cadence, Santan, and then South Tempe is opening up too. That's a little bit more south. But another one in the west side, West Valley, Paradise Valley is about to open too. And then we have 2 open locations one's open in Colorado, and then the other one is like right behind it is about to open, but it's been
oh, so even outside of Arizona. That's awesome.
Yeah, we're looking to go everywhere.
So one of the key things besides fulfillment that you mentioned, and what I love is alignment, right? You found, and I kind of want to direct this back to, where were you at in your martial arts training at the time? Mm-hmm. And this was a piece that was fully aligned to that portion of your life, but maybe you hadn't put all the pieces together, but was a big deciding factor. Where were you at training at that point compared to now?
Yeah, so I wasn't at Golden Era at the time. I was at a different gym. And at the time, like, I guess when I started the sport, I wanted to become a professional fighter, and that was like a goal of mine. And I was like, yeah, I'm going to be a professional fighter and blah, blah, blah. And I like continued to follow that commitment and promise to myself, like a lot of other athletes do, essentially. So me following up on that promise, I was like, I'm going to do whatever it takes to make this work. Like, I'm just going to grind it out. If I have to work 3 jobs to support myself, I will. Because, at the time I only had maybe 4 or 5 fights, and that's not enough to go pro. Like, you need about 15 to 20, and that's kind of where I'm at right now. But with that, like, I guess the mentality that I had back then, it was like, I'll do whatever it takes to become a professional fighter. So, I did. I kept, like, I basically went through a lot of emotional turmoil and stayed at a job that didn't satisfy me or fulfill me or make me happy in any sort of way, just to keep grinding and keep paying the bills and keep buying myself like food and being able to show up to training, even if it was like I only had an hour or 2 practice a day. I just loved it so much that I was like, I have to just keep going and keep hanging on, And
how many times would you say that you've considered, like, the doubts crept into your head about quitting, giving up? And what have you done to combat that?
Oh man, this is something that I talked to somebody about recently, but yeah, I told my very first coach, one of my very first coaches at the time. I've hopped around to many different gyms, but one of my very first coaches I told when I first started out on the journey of like Muay Thai and kickboxing and jiu-jitsu, I was like, I want to become a professional fighter. And this like 15, 16-year-old Callie is just like bursting with joy, like so excited about this and seeing all these women come up. And I loved like Holly Holm and all the women in the UFC. It was just like, oh, this is so cool. And he looked at me and he was like, you'll never do it. Like, you'll never become a professional fighter.
Whoa.
And I was like, oh. I was like, okay.
Were you so discouraged at that point? Like,
I was kind of like, oh shoot, okay, like I guess not. Maybe this isn't for me. But then I was like, no, like I really like this. I'm really committed and dedicated to this. Like, I think I can do it. I was like, I had no idea what it takes to be like a professional fighter. I didn't.
Maybe it was his way of pushing you.
Yeah, maybe. Like, you never know. But I kept going with it, and I think just fight after fight after fight, I had this mentality from 15 to 20 or 21, I would say, when I really started settling down with Reset and figuring out like what Reset and fighting both looked like within my life. But between that time, I kept pursuing that, like, that same thought, like, I'm going to be a professional fighter. I'm going to be a professional fighter. And I just kept, like, repeating that. And it would exhaust me because I would spend so much time thinking about forcing it to happen and forcing it to come to me versus like showing up as that person of like, yeah, I am a professional. I train like a professional, but I wasn't there
Your identity,
yet. You know, I was just trying to manifest it. So up until I was about, like I said, 2021, I stopped wanting that like vision over my life. You know, like I kind of gave up that identity. I was like, you know what? If I become a professional fighter, cool. If not, cool. Like, I don't care. Like, I just love fighting. I love doing it. And that's just where I'm at. Like, and I'm at like fight number 13 right now. I'm about to go to Mexico next week and I'll have 4 girls to compete against, or maybe 3, depending on like what happens. But I'll have 3 girls to compete against. And that like technically would be enough for me to go pro. But at this phase of my life, I'm comfortable and secure with where I'm at. And I know that like I have so much to still learn and do in the sport that I don't even want to think about becoming a professional fighter just yet. I still want to learn and grow. But I didn't have that mentality when I was younger, because I just needed security. I was looking for the money in it. I was looking for, you know, the confirmation of like, yeah, I'm good and like I'm a professional and blah, 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 you know. So, and I wanted to prove my coach wrong and I wanted to prove myself right. So that's kind of where I was at.
I love that.
Well, you've also leaned into the studio so much, which is so cool. When we go back to the alignment piece, that you've developed a whole nother skill set that is well beyond your years in regard to not just going through, and we were talking about this kind of before we kicked off, how good you are at walking people through the modalities at Reset, which can be challenging at some points. I've witnessed enough of that, but actually knowing the operation of the business and working with Tim, working with Ashley to know how the business is running. So you have now this other skill set that's been built in tandem just by pursuing this alignment of the recovery portion of fighting as well.
Sure.
Has that snuck up on you, or has that been... I'm guessing that wasn't 100% by design, but I want to hear your thoughts there.
Definitely wasn't planned. Actually, it's so funny. So when I was like a part-time guidance specialist, that's what we call those people, the role of the people who work part-time for us. I was training somebody to be the studio manager of Uptown, and Ashley had me help her kind of train side by side, and Ashley and I started to develop. I mean, Ashley and I were kind of close, and Steven, if you don't know, Ashley is the vice president of Reset Mind and Body right now, but she used to be the studio manager of the studio that you went to, and that was the only studio we really had open at the time, but we were opening up another studio in Arcadia. So I was training a studio manager for that studio for Uptown, and Ashley was supposed to go over to Arcadia and go find somebody for Arcadia because Tim wanted to continue expanding. So I was training this girl, and Ashley and I were starting to notice a few things about this girl, and we were trying to make a decision on whether or not, you know, we wanted to keep her as like the studio manager or not. And at the time I was kind of like, I didn't have any envy or anything. I didn't even think of myself as like, oh yeah, I could be the studio manager. Like, it just didn't come up to me. But then there was a point where I was like, okay, we have to make a decision that's going to fit the needs of the company in a way where it's not going to put us behind. And I can't see myself working for this lady, you know, or under this lady essentially. And I was like, well, what if I just do it? And she was like, you know, I didn't ask you because I knew you were fully committed to fighting. And I didn't want to like ruin like what that would look like for you, like going into a full-time role and taking away some time from fighting. And at the time, I'm still kind of climbing the ranks. I'm still like having a fight, but I was only fighting about once a year. So I was like, well, I think I can make it work. Like, I really like to train, but I think I can like make my schedule work around fighting and Reset with this like full-time position, becoming the studio manager. So I did. And that's when I also left my old gym and came to Golden Era, and a lot of different things changed for me. But going into like a studio manager role or any managerial role, coming from a background of not having that experience and only knowing how to lead myself, it was challenging to try to direct and lead a team, but it was also at the same time like I felt like I was equipped for it because I knew how to lead myself in a way with like discipline and character and having conversations with people. I think the biggest thing that like I learned from jumping into a role like that after not having any experience like being a manager at all was I guess more so around like the people that I was meeting and how to navigate and have conversations and check in with members. And yeah, like Phil was saying, just like the actual, you know, systems of what it takes to be a manager of a community, you know, or like a leader of a community, you know?
Yeah. As leaders, I mean, leading by example, obviously you've got a lot of credibility for being at that place for some time, but also, like you said, your discipline, your character, and leading by example. But you know what? No one was born a manager. We all started somewhere and we all had to learn the hard way. And it's very rare that you find an organization that has like a full management training program. So we've all gone through it and it sounds like you're well on your way, but you're doing one fight a year. Now it sounds like you might be doing more than one fight a year. Yeah. And so what does your morning look like? What's your morning routine? Is that when you get your training in, or are you doing it at evening, or how are you weaving that in?
My training. So my training used to be a lot different, but right now at Golden Era, you know, I'm so blessed to have coaches that have guided the way for me. They've been in the sport for decades. I mean, like 2 of the coaches that oversee some of my training have, you know, fought and competed and trained for their entire lives, and they're around 30 years old. And then our head coach, he's in his late 60s, early 70s. I can't remember his exact age. He just had a birthday though, so I feel bad. But he's been in the sport for over 50 years, and he used to train in Thailand. So they have a good regimen and system that they've put together and built over the course of years, training fighters and athletes and students as well. But for anybody on the competitive team, you know, you're required to run an hour a day, whether that be in the morning, afternoon, or night. And then we have an evening practice that ranges for about 2 to 3 hours a night. Where we're doing a lot of heavy cardio and drilling and technique and working with a coach and then sparring, like all kinds of stuff. So my training for me, like I wake up early in the morning because I really like to see the sunrises in Arizona. It's very beautiful. So I'll wake up around like 5:30, 6, depending on the day, and then I'll go run. Recently I've been weightlifting again, like 3 days out of the week too. So that was kind of like on my own time. And then I go train in the evening 5 days a week, and Saturdays and Sundays are just my long run days. So I pick, you know, a good hour or 2 block, and I go run for as long and as far as I can.
Let's talk a little bit about Muay Thai, because listeners may not know as much about it.
Listeners.
Yeah, well, yeah. My co-host might not either. I'm not
one co-host and listeners. I want to hear all about this.
My shins hurt anytime I even talk or think about Muay Thai. But let's give a rundown of the sport. We had Fred on and talked a little jiu-jitsu, just at a high level for the listeners. Tell us a little bit about Muay Thai.
So yeah, I started off with jiu-jitsu and loved it. Muay Thai, I had that crossover. Well, I shouldn't say Muay Thai. It was more of kickboxing. But the Muay Thai that I'm doing right now is very different. It's an art of 8 limbs. That's what they call it. And it consists of 2s and 2s. So 2 elbows, 2 knees, 2 shins, and then 2 fists. They used to do headbutts back in the day, but they, made it illegal because it's just very dangerous in America, obviously. So they stopped doing that. But it's punches, kicks.
Is it legal elsewhere?
In Thailand, sometimes well, I don't think they do it anymore, but in underground events or fights.
In the streets.
Yeah, in the Fight Club.
Ain't nobody holding you back.
Yeah, hey, what happens at Fight Club stays at Fight Club.
Yep. So yeah, it's a very violent sport, and but it's also just it's a beautiful type of violence, essentially. So yeah.
Well, okay, so when Phil told me you were coming on, I went and checked out your Instagram. You're a beast.
Oh, thank you.
Unassuming, don't take this the wrong way, but seeing you walk down the street, you wouldn't think so. You're very, welcoming, and you're not you don't look like you're an absolute beast, but you are a beast, and you obviously have put in a lot of work. And it's awesome to see your success. So what's this fight like as you prepare for next week in Mexico?
Yeah.
What are you doing? how are you working with your mind and your body to get ready?
Yeah, so our camps, we call them fight camps, and it's the type of training that you go through before you go and compete. It, depends on like the coach and the team, but usually they're over the course of like 8 to 10 weeks. And you start dieting down, and your diet becomes a little bit more strict as the weeks go on, and the training is very intense. Like you're doing a lot of sparring, you're doing a lot of road work, you're doing a lot of pad work, you're working with the coach one-on-one. But for this fight, it's very interesting because I'm used to, like this last year, I fought 4 5-round fights. So that's 20 rounds.
Is that long? Are they usually, are the fights usually over pretty quick? Or is that typical to have 5 rounds?
Yeah, it's typical to have 3, but 5 rounds are like a championship fight. So
it's usually a title.
I see. Okay,
that's
so
for
it's
a
like
title.
a best of?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Kind of like the UFC, how the UFC does it, where they have like the 3 rounders for the prelim guys and then 5 rounders for like the guys that are competing for the belt, So
Oh, I see. Okay,
that's essentially what they made it in America. So usually there are 5-round fights for championships, and that's what I was doing all last year, and I had 4 of those. And this year, we're kicking off 2025 with 3-round fights in Mexico. So this is an international tournament. This is my first time ever competing in an international tournament, and they're starting to do this more to represent, Muay Thai, like make it more popular among just the entire world. So I'll be competing against multiple different women in my weight class and in my division from different countries. So I'm a part of an elite division right now. So it's girls with any more than 10 fights, and they're in like my specific weight class. And in that weight class, like you could compete against girls across the world. So right now I have a girl from Canada in my bracket, a girl from Peru in my bracket, and a girl from Mexico in my bracket. And, for this fight, I guess like for any fight, we're not really training for that individual opponent. We're training to build the best self that I could possibly be going into that fight, if that makes sense. So, I mean, sometimes it's helpful to take away certain techniques from that specific opponent if you know a little bit about them and try to work on those, whether it's like countering, countering a heavy puncher, or, blocking checks from a kicker, or maintaining range, or getting inside a little bit more for the specific person. But these girls, we have no idea who they are and how they fight.
It's almost like that's probably better going in, right? Like if they're like dominating somewhere, let's say the Canadian girl's like just crushing it in Canada, and you go into that fight, it almost could mess with your mental game a little bit, at least probably me. But if you didn't know and you just went into it like, oh, it's just another fight, you're so well prepared and disciplined, it probably helps you. But speaking on that, like when you do go into a fight, do you have like the highest confidence in the world, like, oh, I've got this, no problem? Or does doubt ever creep in knowing when you look across the ring?
Yeah, no, I mean, I am confident in my training, and I'm definitely confident in the systems that I have leading up to the fight, but certainly doubt creeps in and fears will creep in, and that's part of the game. That's a part of being a fighter, is you have to fight those. You have to know how to, be courageous enough and fight from here and from here, and if you know how to do that, then you can overcome your own mental blocks and barriers. You are the only one that's kind of limiting yourself in the sport. So, I've had fights where, I'll be in the warm-up room and I'm like, I can't believe I'm doing this right now. I'm so
this is my life.
Yeah, I'm like shaking. I'm like, oh my God, and then being like the main event sometimes like puts a little bit of pressure on people, but it's all about what you tell yourself and about like, just being confident in your own preparation. I think the biggest thing is if you didn't put your all into fight camp, it can certainly throw you off mentally, because then you're thinking about the what ifs and the buts and the things that you didn't do versus the things that you did. And, I've had fights where I've lost because I was thinking about that a little too hard. So
you nailed so much there that just applies to life. And this is one of the things that I've realized, very novice in my jiu-jitsu journey. And I have to thank Reset for that, honestly, for the call to action, because it just wound up being in the same parking lot as Soul Jiu-Jitsu and finally got me in the doors. But it's one of the things that slaps you across the face, and that they're cliches for a reason, why people say martial arts and training it just makes everything in life better, which has been ever evident to me is because of how closely it applies to every area of life. And I know you and I have nerded out a little bit about this in passing at Reset quite a bit. But what are some of the more tangible ways that you've applied that one-to-one with your training, with martial arts, with business, and just life in general?
Yeah, so I think both have complemented each other very well. I've pulled a lot from my martial arts journey over into Reset and how I navigate in the world in general, not even just Reset. And I think vice versa with Reset and fighting and the rest of the world too. So thank God for like the coaches that you meet along the way and the people that you meet along the way that kind of like hold the ground for you and show you the foundation of things. Like Austin's an incredible person. My coaches are incredible, you know, and then like even my past, just the things that I've learned in the sport and then outside of life and with Reset, Tim and Ashley, I've really accumulated a lot of knowledge and understanding for how I want to show up in this world and how I want my world to be and like become, you know. So I think the more tangible things are definitely the discipline, right? So like disciplining your mind and disciplining your body and disciplining like your character and your morale. If you have very good discipline of like, I'm going to do this no matter what, even if I'm not motivated for it, then you can honestly kind of do anything, you know, like nothing's limiting.
Absolutely.
Because you're like very strong and your willpower is strong, you know. So that's definitely one of the tangible things. I think another thing is that's a very good question. I think
why should we be capable of violence?
I mean, this world is a scary place, you know, and not just physically with like people attacking other people and like other things going on, like, you know, people going crazy for different reasons, politics and money and, you know, all different kinds of stuff. But I think more so in a spiritual way too. A lot of people have different minds and different mindsets and things that they tell themselves in the world, and you can get very easily wrapped up in that. So it is good to know how to, I guess, like be violent, but how to like defend yourself in different ways, like mentally and physically. And I think that's another one of the tangible things. Yeah, for sure. And also like knowing when to turn that off and how to be yourself in this world too, because I go through a lot of sparring. I don't want to fight anybody on the street. Like my body's already sore enough. I'm ready to just go home and go to bed and be happy the rest of my day, you know? So yeah, like just showing up as your authentic self in this world. But yeah,
it's better to be a warrior in a garden than a gardener in a war.
I love that. I love that quote.
Well, it's just knowing what you're capable of, whether you use it or not. If you have the confidence and know what's possible, you'll never figure it out unless you challenge yourself, right, on purpose. And so you have to continue pushing that growth. Yep. And then once you know what you are capable, if you can, you know, fight and use that violence, if you have to, you know, you got it. You're using it, you know, as an outlet to achieve some really massive goals and do some really cool things. But it also has to feel pretty damn good. Like when you do walk around the street and be like, dude, I could totally just take these people out if I wanted to, you know, like if something were to happen, not that you would, right? Because you said you can turn that off.
Yeah.
You mentioned a lot of things too. I think one of the key things is your preparation. I mean, that goes with anything. I mean, like if you're, you know, you got to lead a team meeting or you got to do a public speaking engagement or even for this podcast, like, you know, like the more prepared you are, the more confident you are and the less butterflies you have and the less nerves you have, but you're always nervous because you care, right? And that's the biggest thing. You're always gonna have those nerves because you care a lot about it. But when you're prepared, it puts those butterflies to bed and you're like, all right, it's go time.
For sure. You said it.
Taking it back to recovery. One of the things I've been having a lot of discussions, actually with our men's group, Junto, who I've kind of become known for forcing the cold a little bit here and there on those guys.
Zen master.
No, but like some of these discussions come and you hear, oh, you know, cold therapy, sauna, the hot cold modalities are a trend, right? They're a fad. Mm-hmm. I couldn't disagree more, as you know. What would you say to those folks as it has completely blown up over the last 3 or 4 years? What would you say to those folks that are skeptical of the hot cold therapies and just recovery in general?
I mean, you can't knock it till you try it, like literally.
That's true.
Yeah. I mean, I have people in my life who also tell me like, oh, like you don't really need that stuff and blah, blah, blah. And like, the truth is like, you do need it. You do need it in your life. And I think it is so transformative for what it does for your mind and for your body and, taking care of yourself. It's just another form of self-care and recovery. People have been doing this for a very, very long time. But, it's kind of like anything. Like people will say, oh, well, sleep is vital and vitamins, like take your vitamins and stuff like that. And this is just one of those extra things that you can do for yourself, for your mind and for your body, and doing it every day. You can definitely notice a difference, So, and when I was doing my sessions every day, and I'm still trying to work on this right now. This is one of my New Year's resolutions is doing my sessions a little bit more. But when I was doing it every day, I was noticing a difference in my performance and fighting, and also just like how I showed up in the world mentally too. Like my self-talk was changing, and the things that I was able to accomplish throughout the day were I guess like I was able to have more of like a clear mindset going into certain things, like how you guys were talking about preparation. Like it was allowing me to prepare for the rest of my day. If I just did a quick cold plunge, because you can't think about anything when they're in the cold plunge other than not freaking out and dying,
Not dying. Yeah.
Just like the ring, just like the mat.
Yeah, exactly. So you're just like sitting there and you're like trying to breathe, trying to relax. And this is one of my favorite things is taking people through a session and they're like freaking out. And I'm like, okay, just breathe. Like we're going to take a big, deep breath in through the nose and out through the mouth together. And I want you to relax your shoulders and relax your mind and only focus on my voice. And when you do that over a period of time, you're changing the neurons in your brain, the neural pathways in your brain to respond differently to stress than how you normally would. As humans, we're programmed to already like be in a state of stress and fear when that sort of like fight or flight response shows up in our life.
Yeah, survival mode.
Yes, exactly, survival mode. And it's like, like we can think that and, that it naturally shows up as a way to try to protect us, but we can also remind it like, hey, we don't really need you because we know how to make this a little bit different so that, I can protect myself a little bit better. So, and that's essentially just like taking those big deep breaths, relaxing yourself, grounding yourself, and responding to that stress pathway a little bit differently than, what we would normally do. So
for me, it's so interesting to see watching you take people through the cold. You can see it in their face when they reach the point of I'm the boss and they want everything is telling them to get out of the plunge, but that moment when they realize I'm okay, I'm actually the one. I always say bringing a gun to a knife fight, not to make this too violent, but it is taking ownership that I'm in control of this meat suit and I can stay in this water for 3 minutes. And you see that moment switch and it's an empowering moment. There's a little bit of there's endorphins firing off. And it's just it's an exercise that I agree. It just it flows out to the other areas of your life.
And for some of those people, like that's probably their first time ever feeling like they have control over their own mind and body. Like some people definitely have that a little bit more of emotional and intellectual awareness of their own mind and body. But for some people that come in here, whether they have like severe anxiety or depression or whatever they're going through in their day-to-day world, and they come in and they experience what you're talking about, Phil, like their life has just changed in that moment. That was a pivotal moment for them.
I'm not gonna lie. Steven handled it kind of like a champ out the gate. He just
that's not true. No way.
He suffered. Then he suffered inside because he was like it wasn't as entertaining as other people. I'll put it that way.
The first one I did, I think, was it was at Junto Summit in Flagstaff, and it was like full blown like
ice
troughs and ice, and we got in these like it was outside and it was a portable thing. I full blown had a panic attack. Like it literally was like, oh my god, and then it was like 40 seconds of that. Like I'm dying, and then it just everything released, and I was like, holy shit, I felt like I could live in here, and I was in there for like 2 minutes, and it's like you do get to that point. Either A, it was mind over matter, or B, my whole body just went numb and I couldn't feel anything anyway. So don't know which one it was, but I made it through the 2
both.
minutes. Yeah, and then when I got out, it was incredibly refreshing. Like the natural body high I got, and just like the fact that it was like it happened and I did it, and it was something challenging I never thought I would do. And it's just like it is scary at first. Like it's like 40 degrees or whatever it is, right? And now I've done it, and now you get in, it's like the panic attack feeling or whatever. After that one, it was just that first time, and then now you know what to expect. And you're like, all right, let's freaking.
What was funny about that, Callie, is there was like 20, type A guys that are all super tough, talk a big game, and it's so funny what 2 tubs of ice will do to that to that energy dynamic. Guys start looking around like.
I've took some like different professional athletes and bodybuilders and people through a session, and just watching these guys kind of like, or like women too, but some of the guys have a little bit more like that testosterone macho, like I'm the shit kind of like. Sorry, I don't know if I can. My bad, but
yeah, for sure,
absolutely.
Cool. Yeah, they're walking around like and then they get in the cold plunge and they're all like flailing and freaking out. I'm like, just breathe. He's like, I can't do it. I'm like, okay.
Yeah, you have to get through that first 30 seconds. Like I got terrible ankles, so I remember like not prevention actually, it was recovery from spraining ankles and whatnot. And you have your leg in the ice bath, but not your whole body. Like you've never and it's like when it comes to your core, like you're in that survival mode where all the blood's rushing to your core just to protect the asset. And so, but yeah, that was interesting. We had one guy not do it, and then we look over to the left, and Phil's underneath the whole damn thing with a little bamboo shoot sticking out. And we're like, "Good God, man!" It's like this guy's and we're here like freaking
That was the
out.
last time. That was the last time I did that.
I can't believe we did that. I would have been claustrophobic, and that was insane.
Callie, this has been such an awesome conversation, and we thank you so much for coming on. We have one key question, capstone question that we like to end every conversation on, and it's what is the definition of success to Callie Patrick in your words?
Always, I would say, just always striving to be a better version than the person that I am right now. That's success to me, is always learning, just like being a sponge for life, and always accumulating and just trying my best, and also just giving myself grace for where I'm at too. I mean, there's so many things that I like, so many goals I want to accomplish, but I don't want to define that as the level of success that I have in this life, because I know the most important thing to me in this life is that I continue to learn and evolve as a person.
That's so good.
Awesome.
And you're on an incredible trajectory. Amazing where you're at 22, and I can't wait to see where you go.
You're 22 years old?
23.
Oh my gosh.
Oh,
I had no idea. You're like, I was 23, not talking like this at all. I was on a whole nother level, just being a degenerate. And that's amazing. You're on an incredible path. I'm excited for you. I'm going to follow you on Instagram. I'm going to watch your fight, and good luck in the next week here as you prepare for your big one in Mexico. And I hope you bring home all the glory you're seeking.
All the gold. We're bringing home gold, baby.
There you
Team
go.
USA.
there we go.
Thank you, guys. Thank you so much for talking with me. And this was an awesome conversation. I always love having conversations like these, too. So, and best of luck with your future podcast, too. I'll have to go and look at the one that you had with Fred, too, because I didn't even know that. So
I'll shoot it over to you.
Yeah, that was a few months back. That was a good one.
sweet.
Like, subscribe. We will be back at you next week, and tune in for a couple of other great guests we have coming in the future. Thanks, y'all.